And we're here to worship God, and we are in Matthew chapter 7. And this verse that we're looking at, verse 6, if you have your Bible, Matthew 7:6, is not the one that I wanted to preach on, but it's the one that God said, that's your verse. I was going to preach on the first 5 verses, but I've done that many times, and God said, yeah, you already covered that. Let's balance it out with verse 6. And I said, okay, God, and I said, but that's only one verse, which makes me nervous as a pastor, because I'd like plenty of verses to make sure we hit something and make sure I can fill the time. But God said, no, there's something in this verse for someone. So if you're here today, if you're listening online, there's somebody that needs to hear this word, because the Holy Spirit would not let me pass by it without preaching on it. And one of the things that I learned as I studied this verse is, of course, as always, it's very deep, very profound, as Jesus always is, but it also adds a balance to some of the things that Jesus taught. And I think that balance is healthy, because sometimes we can take one verse in the Bible and we can take it out of context and end up in some weird places. And so part of what we need to do when we study the Bible and when we study the teachings of Jesus is look at the whole picture and see how he taught the whole teaching, because he balances, and Jesus, I believe, was the most balanced human that ever lived. In fact, the word balance is one of my core values, because I think so much of life is trying to find a balance, right? You want to be busy, but not too busy. You don't want to sit at home with nothing to do, but you say, well, I'm so busy, that sounds fantastic. But let me tell you, if you're unemployed for a while, you'll start to go a little crazy. And those that don't have a job want a job, and those that have a job don't want a job. I have a good friend of mine, my best friend, and he has remained single his whole life. And we often have conversations throughout our lives, and he tells me how miserable it is to be single, and I tell him how miserable it is to be married. And we both feel better about our choices. Because when you have the one, you want the other. When you have the other, you want the one, right? It's human nature, but there's a balance. There's a balance to life, and Jesus taught with a balance. I remember when I was in college, I read a book called The Road Less Traveled. Famous book, many of you have probably come across it, by M. Scott Peck. Good book. What's interesting, the author of the book, M. Scott Peck, was a psychiatrist, and he was a Zen Buddhist when he wrote the book. And he talked about how, in the book, he talked a whole section about how we need to pursue the truth at all costs. That was one of his virtues, his values, that we as humans were here to discover and learn and grow. And even when it's painful, even when it's hard to confront that truth, it is in our best interest always to pursue and follow the truth. Well, by his next book, Further Down the Road Less Traveled, he was a Christian, because he found that Christianity explained what he observed in life, and he had to follow the truth wherever it led. Isn't that interesting? And one of the things he said in that book, and he had a whole chapter, I believe, on it, was a chapter on paradox. And he recalls how when he was in his higher educational endeavors, one of his professors said to him, the greatest truth in life is that life is a paradox. And I thought about that, and I said, well, that sounds a little too philosophical and deep for me. But then as I read the whole chapter, I understood what he meant. And what he meant is simply kind of the simpler phrase that we might say, which is, there are two sides to every coin. So you want to be busy, but not too busy. You want something in the middle. You want to be honest, but there are times where maybe you don't want to be brutally honest. Like when your wife says, do I look like I've gained weight? Maybe that's not the time to be brutally honest. Do these jeans make me look fat? Those are nice jeans. There's a balance, and so much of life is about finding that balance. And I just bring that as a context as we come into Matthew 7, verse 6, because I think what Jesus is doing is he's painting a balance to some other things that he said. And what this paradoxical kind of reality to our existence means is that we will need discernment to know when to apply certain principles, certain teachings of Jesus, and which ones to apply to what circumstance. So you remember, well, first let's read 7:6. Matthew 7, verse 6. In the NIV it says, "Do not give to the dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. For if you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces." Pretty descriptive, right? So you have something valuable, pearls, something beautiful, something elegant. I don't know if any women here have a pearl necklace, but they are known as kind of a classic piece of jewelry. You would wear it on a night out at the gala or somewhere where you wanted to look elegant and beautiful. And Jesus says, you know, you wouldn't take those beautiful, precious pearls and give them to pigs. Because if you know anything about a pig, they're very messy. They are probably the furthest thing from elegant. You would not take a pig out for a night on the town. You don't see celebrities with pigs in their purses walking around. You see them with little Yorkies, right? Like, a pig is not an elegant, kind of beautiful animal. And Jesus says, what is more, you could give these beautiful, precious pearls to these pigs. Not only would they not appreciate it, they would probably trample them, you know, stamp them into the mud and dirt, and then they'd come after you and tear you to pieces, he said. They wouldn't even appreciate that you gave them such a valuable, wonderful gift. So do not give the pearls to the pigs. But, husbands, you could give some pearls to your wife. She would probably appreciate that. I'm pretty sure there'd be a smile on her face. And I'm pretty sure she would be impressed. So you want to give the pearls to the right recipient. Now you remember, it wasn't too long ago, we preached in Matthew chapter 5, verse 39 through 42, Jesus' words. Remember where he said, do not resist an evil person. If someone slaps you on one cheek, what do? Turn the other one. If someone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand them your coat as well. Remember this? If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks from you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow. So now you can see these two teachings seem, on the surface, to kind of contradict. On one hand, Jesus says, don't give your pearls, don't give valuable things to those who aren't going to appreciate it. And then on the other hand, he's already taught us, hey, if an evil person comes to you and they want to take your shirt, give them your coat as well. Don't resist someone who's evil. Give them the stuff that they ask for. If they want to borrow, let them borrow it. If they say, walk with me a mile, give them 2 miles. And so we wonder, what does Jesus mean here? Why is he teaching one thing one day? Actually, this was earlier in the sermon, so it was all in the same day. Why is he teaching one lesson here and a different lesson there? What do we make of these contradictory passages? What is it that we're not to give, and what is it that we are supposed to give, and how would we know the difference? You know, I was reading a Bible commentary this week as I was studying for this sermon, and I was trying to figure out, what are these pearls? What do they represent? And so one of the Bible commentaries I read, the author said, the pearl is the gospel, because the gospel is valuable and shining and beautiful. And he's saying, don't preach the gospel to people who don't want it, who don't care. Don't waste your time on them. But then I got to thinking, I'm not quite sure the gospel is what he's talking about. Number one, there was no gospel yet. This was his first sermon ever. There was no gospel going out. There was no word gospel yet that they were using to describe the teaching of Jesus. And I came across Mark chapter 2, verse 16 and 18. And it tells the story that the teachers of the law and the Pharisees, they saw Jesus, and they saw that he was eating with sinners and tax collectors. This is the bottom of the barrel of that time period. We could even say the dogs or the pigs of that time. Jesus is eating with them. He's fellowshipping with them. And the Pharisees and teachers of the law say, verse 17, why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners? Why in the world would he do this? And Jesus overheard them, and he replied, it is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I did not come to call the righteous, but the sinners. So I'm not sure that when he says these pearls, that he's talking about the gospel, because Jesus seemed to take the gospel to anyone and everyone. And it didn't matter how low you went or how great a sinner you were, or dare we say, how much of a pig you were. Jesus would offer you the gospel, I think. And I think he would give it, and he would bring it to you. So I think he's getting at something different. Well, there's another text in Matthew 13 a little later. It's the only other time that Jesus talks about pearls, or a pearl. And it's found in Matthew 13, verse 45 and 46. And I think here Jesus finally gives us a clue as what he's talking about. You've heard this before, and he puts it in the form of a metaphor. He said the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant, and he was looking for fine pearls. When he found one, verse 46 of Matthew 13, when he found one of great value, he went away, sold everything he had, and he bought that pearl. So this is fascinating. So here his pearls come back into Jesus' teaching. And in this case, he said the kingdom of heaven, it's like this guy, and he just wants the most beautiful, precious pearls that he can find. And he's looking everywhere for them. He's on a quest. He's on a mission. And one day he finds one particular pearl, and I imagine it must be extra large, and it must be extra pure. And I'm not a jeweler, so I don't know what kind of purity, clarity, or whatever makes a pearl better one than another. I know they come in different shades or something. And so he finds the one that's the most perfect shade and perfect value. And he's so excited because he's been looking for this his whole life that he's willing to sell everything to acquire this pearl. And so in this parable, a pearl is something very valuable. It's something that we would be searching for. It's something that when we find it, we find what we've been wanting. We find what we've been looking for. And so I think that gives us a clue. Now, Jesus never defines it. And so I'm going to give you my thoughts, but I want to challenge you to talk to God about this, because it's possible by very definition of this parable and this metaphor that what's a pearl to you may not be a pearl to me. But I want to ask you this question: what are you searching for? What is it that if you had it would mean more to you than anything else? Because whatever that is what Jesus is talking about. Now, I'm not talking hypothetically. I'm not just talking like, well, it'd be really nice to have like $10 million. That would be great. It'd be really nice if I could be like a famous person and everybody thought I was great. I think we can recognize that some things that the world values may not actually be that valuable. So if that's where your mind's going, like maybe you're really hungry right now and you're thinking about your favorite meal, and you'd say, man, if I could have that after church, I would pay like $100. I haven't had that in a long time. I don't think Jesus is talking about something that has just temporary, fleeting value. I think he's talking about something that when you find it, you really finally find what your life is about. what matters. In fact, I want to suggest to you it's implied that whatever this merchant found was of such great value that everything else was sold to obtain it, that he is finally finding what he's been looking for. He is finally finding something about his life that he doesn't ever want to trade for anything else. So maybe one way of defining these pearls is to say they are our values. They are the things that we value. They are the principles. They are the truth about ourselves that we discover in God, that we don't want to compromise. You know, one of the things that we've probably learned if we've lived for any length of time on this planet is that while it is important to love others and it is important to be generous and giving, as Jesus said in Matthew 5, if somebody needs something, give them extra, go the extra mile, turn the other cheek. While we see the value of that, we also start to learn that there are times when we have to have this thing called boundaries. There are times when the right answer and the godly answer is no. And we teach this to our children, right? You know, Johnny, if all your friends are cheating on a test and they ask you if you want the answers, what are you supposed to say? No. And so we teach our children that there are times where they have to have boundaries. We teach them about peer pressure. We teach them that if they're in a situation and things are going down that are not right and their friends are breaking the law, give us a call. We won't ask questions. We'll just come get you. Because we don't want you to cross those lines. There are boundaries that we need to have. There are principles that we need to stand for. There are things about ourselves that we should not compromise. And this is the balance. You see, when Jesus is saying to love others, when Jesus is saying to give to others, he's not saying that we have to please others. Whether or not we give is our choice based on our principles and our relationship to God. And there are times when the most loving thing we can do is to tell someone, no, I can't help you. No, I can't rescue you. No, I can't deliver you. No, I can't bail you out in this situation. Because sometimes the most loving thing we can do is let someone bear the consequences of their choices. We do it with our children, but sometimes as adults, we kind of get blurred. These lines get blurred for us. And I think when Jesus says, hey, don't give your pearls to the pigs, he is saying you need to know what your values are, and you cannot let anyone come into your life and force you to compromise those values. Because the people that will make you compromise your values, once you do, will be the first ones to turn on you and accuse you of compromising your values. Those coworkers that are putting pressure on you, you know, just fudge the numbers a little here, and if you can just sign off on this thing here, will be the first ones to rat you out when it's convenient and get you fired for what they pressured you to do. And some of you, unfortunately, know exactly what I'm talking about. This is why Jesus calls them dogs or pigs. By the way, Jesus could have just said people. We know he's talking about people, obviously. It's a metaphor. But I do appreciate that he didn't say people, because I think even for Jesus, what he's saying is some people don't act like people. We are to love people. We are to help people, respect people, but some people, their behavior crosses the line of humane. Their behavior is unacceptable, and to those people we must say no. To those people, we must have boundaries. To those people that would manipulate us, that would use us, that would bring us down, that would cause us to compromise who we are in Jesus Christ, to those people, we are not to give our pearls. There's a man named Daniel. As a young man, he was taken captive. You know this story. He was brought to a foreign country with a pagan king. And he was chosen with some friends of his that they showed promise, that they were going to excel. And the new king of Babylon said, I want to bring the most promising of our captives and put them in our schools and train them and have them serve in our kingdom to make this nation even greater. And you know the story in Daniel chapter 1. Daniel was chosen to be part of this elite group, and part of the privileges that came with this group is he would get to eat from the king's table. And that meant that he would get to drink wine and alcohol. He would get to eat all the pigs and luscious meat and all the things that were considered delicacies for the wealthy and the privileged of his day. And you remember what Daniel said to the one who was put over him. He said, you know what? My values tell me that I can eat food that is better than the king's food. Yeah, it may not taste as good. I don't know if Daniel said that. But I'm imagining because a lot of times it doesn't quite taste as good. But it's better for me. And if you want me to excel, and if you want me to be at my best, then I need to eat good food, simple food. I can't have the wine. I can't eat this meat. And if you'll just give me 10 days, I can prove it. And you remember that the Bible says the Lord moved upon those who were overseeing Daniel as friends, and they said, all right, we'll give you 10 days, but you better prove this, because the king could have my head for this. And so he goes for the 10 days, and after those 10 days, it says that Daniel and his 3 friends tested 10 times smarter than the other candidates and the other students. Because Daniel knew he had something. He valued being different. In fact, what is interesting here, this word, it says, do not give to the dogs what is sacred. The word sacred, in its most basic interpretation, means different. Isn't that interesting? It's something that's different from the norm. It's something that's set apart because it's different, it's unique. And so Daniel said, hey, I know it's not popular, but being different is better, and it's my value, and I don't want to compromise it. And just give me a chance, and I'll prove to you it's a superior way to live. And God blessed him, and it was. Daniel did not cast his pearls to the swine, even when the pressure was there. He said, no, this is the way I live. This is who I am. This is what I stand for. And it may have just been something as simple as diet, but I think for Daniel it was even bigger than diet. It was about loyalty to his God. It was about doing things the right way. If Daniel had compromised there at the beginning, who knows what other compromises would have come. And I want to say especially to our young people here today, when you start to realize what is valuable and what your parents have taught you and what the Bible teaches you, and if you'll be faithful to that, you will never regret it. What you will regret is when you keep compromising. When you keep losing a little bit of yourself because you want to make someone else happy. You want someone else to like you. You want someone else to think good of you. You want to fit in. Jesus said, don't waste your time, because you'll spend all this time fitting in, and the minute you do everything they say, they'll still turn on you. And you still won't be the popular person. You still won't get all the things you were hoping to get by compromising. And I think Jesus calls each one of us to figure out, what are my values? How can I be a person of integrity? How can I walk what I talk? How can I live out what I believe in? Because honestly, there's nothing that feels worse than we compromise a bit of ourselves. when we give some of our pearls away and watch them trampled upon. There are a lot of applications for this, and I don't have time to kind of go over all of them. But I did think of something that Jesus said in John chapter 10. John chapter 10 in verse 17 and 18. Jesus said this very interesting thing, and I think it's important to note because he is the great example of how to live these teachings. John 10, 17 and 18, he says, "The reason my Father loves me is that I give up my life. No one," verse 18, "no one takes it from me." You catch that? Jesus didn't have to say that. He could have just said, my Father loves me because I give up my life. He's talking about the sheep here. I give up my life for the sheep, and he's going to sacrifice himself, and it's wonderful, and we all get salvation. But he makes a point to say, I give it up. No one takes it from me. And therein is the balance. There is the secret. Jesus has given you life. Life is more precious and valuable than anything you can obtain. Ask a rich man on his deathbed how much his stock portfolio means to him at that moment. Ask a rich man on his deathbed how much that car, that house, the notoriety. Ask a celebrity on their deathbed how much all the fame means to them at that moment. And I'm pretty sure they would trade it all for a few more weeks or months or years. Life is ultimately the most precious gift God has given you. And you are responsible for your life. Nobody else can live your life for you. And you might have people telling you what to do. But when you get to heaven and you get before the judgment seat of God, God is not going to say, hey, did you do everything everybody told you to do? And if you get to the judgment seat of God and he says, hey, why did you do these terrible things? I don't think God's going to accept, well, you know, a buddy of mine said we should try it. Or my spouse didn't want to pay tithes, so I just didn't do it. Trying to get more money from my church. Shameless plug. I don't think you can use other people as your excuse when Judgment Day comes. It's your life. It's your body. It's your emotions. It's your brain. Every component that makes us human, God has entrusted you with. You get to decide how to wisely use this. Now, I understand it's scary. I understand it's a huge responsibility. I understand a lot of times we just don't know what to do, and we're in situations that are overwhelming and scary, and we want to please people, but we don't think we can, and I understand all that. But just know that Jesus is saying, I've given you a pearl of great price. Don't throw it to the pigs. Recognize how valuable you are. You can give your life, but don't let someone take it from you. You can give your life to something. You can give your life to helping others. You can give to others, but don't let them take it when it's not theirs to take. You are responsible. It's your choice. It's your stewardship. One of the challenges we have is that it's actually harder to take responsibility than it is to let others tell you what to do. A lot of us go through life, our parents kind of tell us what to do, so we just do that, and then we get married and our spouse tells us what to do, and we join a church and the church tells us what to do, and we just kind of like go along. Oh, okay, they say I should do this, I should do that. But then we get pretty angry when things don't work out. And this is part of the pigs part that I think is interesting, because we can be a pig too. We can do what someone tells us to do, and the minute it doesn't work out, we can go, I knew it was a bad idea. Why did you tell me to do it? It's all your fault, blah, 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 blah. Well, you know what? You didn't have to do it. You had a choice. You don't have to give it to the pigs. If it's not what should be done, then don't do it. And it may mean a hard conversation with someone you love, but it'll be worth it. 2015, I'll close with this story. There was a man, an Irish man. He was good at one thing. It was fighting. I know that's stereotypical, but I don't think it was meant to be that way. He just was good at fighting. And Conor McGregor entered the UFC. I am not a fan of the UFC. I want to go on record. And if you are, I don't know why. I find it very gory and violent and brutal. But I do get the point that as one of my friends told me, you can't look away. Okay. And he was a champion and still is a noted UFC fighter, Conor McGregor. And he had a fight scheduled with another fighter who was also, I believe, undefeated at the time. And the match was getting a lot of billing, and you know they make a lot of money off these fights, and it was going to be pay-per-view and all of this. And then 12 days before the match was to occur, Conor McGregor's opponent had to back out of the fight. He had injured his foot, apparently, in training, and so now the fight is over. It can't happen. But the PR people say, well, we've got the venue, we've got pay-per-view, we got to do something. And so they looked around and they found someone who was willing, with 12 days' notice, to fight the champion, the undefeated. And this man's name was Nate, and I should say young man, Nate Diaz. And everybody said, oh man, this kid is crazy. He's just doing it for the publicity. He's going to get knocked out in the first round. He doesn't stand a chance. He's had 12 days to prepare for this. There's no way he's going to beat the amazing Conor McGregor. And so the 12 days go by, and people tune in expecting to see Conor slaughter this poor guy that had to fill in. He's the apprentice. He's the substitute. He's the backup. Not much hope. What was interesting is during the preliminaries, the few days before the fights, you know, they do these interviews and they kind of go back and forth and talk smack and put each other down. And it came out that Nate Diaz was vegan. And Conor McGregor was very not vegan. In fact, I believe he made a quote about having, you know, a lot of meat every day because it kept him strong and built his muscles. And he said, man. So Conor McGregor referred to his opponent as the gazelle. And he was the lion. And he was going to be eating the carcass at the fight. And that's how the billing went leading into that Saturday night event. Well, the event came, and immediately it became clear that Nate Diaz was going to be more than most people thought. And he fought Conor with a frantic and very fast, frenzied pace. Attacking, attacking, attacking. With a fury and a frenzy and a pacing that Conor was not prepared for. And while Conor was strong and Conor was skilled, the unrelenting force and the pace and the endurance and the energy of Nate Diaz overwhelmed him until by round 2, which is not that far, Nate Diaz pinned him, submitted him, and he lost. Fight was over. 2 rounds. He was done. The legend taken down by a no-name, What is worse, a no-name vegan who wouldn't even eat the manly meat, but destroyed his opponent. And I was watching a documentary called Game Changers on Netflix, which talks about how athletes are discovering the advantages of eating pure plant-based diets. That all the nutrition and everything they need is found in plants, all the protein is found in plants, and that they have an advantage. And so when Nate Diaz wins this fight, suddenly the world looks up and says, wait a minute. How is it that someone who ate this simple kind of primitive diet was so superior to the one eating the stuff that's supposed to make you strong and big and give you all that you need to win something like this? And Nate Diaz was unapologetic. And he said, I am a vegan because I perform better. And he wasn't ashamed, and he didn't let all the mocking and all the mocking he had taken from many within his field change who he was. He did not cast away his pearls. You know, conversely, in the NBA, there was a man named Rick Barry. Who's old enough to remember Rick Barry in the NBA? Okay, a few people. The new kids would never know who he is. Rick Barry was known for one particular thing that kind of made him different. You remember what this was? Yes. This is all I need to do, this. Rick Barry would shoot free throws underhanded. He put the ball in both hands, like this, and he would just toss it up, and he would usually make the free throw. He shot at a very high percentage. I think it was around 90% of his free throws went in with this granny shot, as we call it in basketball. And he was made fun of mercilessly, as are any children that are out on the playground throwing the ball. Now, when you're young, you kind of have to throw the ball that way to get it high enough to get to that 10-foot hoop. But it's kind of a rite of passage on the playground when you get strong enough that you can throw it overhand. And you watch little kids just trying to throw that big basketball up 10 feet, and they always want to do it overhand because that's the cool way to shoot the ball. Rick Barry finished his NBA career. It was a stellar career. He had a very high free throw shooting percentage with this underhanded granny-style shot. And so every once in a while, he was brought in, he says, to help some poor guy who had a horrible free throw shooting percentage. And he would go and he would teach them the underhand method. And Rick Barry would prove to you scientifically, he had slow motion cameras and videos that would show your hands and arms are much more stable and you can have a more consistent shot in an underhand throw. Up here, you've got the elbow, the wrist, all these things that can push the ball a little one side or the other. And when you're down here with just two hands, it's one motion. You can get it straight a lot easier than with this wrist thing and spin and lean back and your elbow, bend your legs. Like there's a lot of things that go wrong in an overhand shot. So Rick Barry said he had a number of clients that when he taught them his underhand way, greatly improved their free throw percentage in practice. But the minute they went out into a game, they would go back to overhand and they would come back and they would tell him, sorry, Rick, the guys are just going to be merciless to me if I do a granny shot out there. One of those guys was Shaquille O'Neal. Rick Barry got Shaquille O'Neal to shoot 80% underhanded free throws. Shaquille was known for 50% at the foul line, which is terrible. It was the only part of his game that was weak. The rest of him he dominated. But they knew if they fouled Shaquille O'Neal, he would probably miss at least one or two of his foul shots, and they started just fouling him all the time because it was better than him scoring the 2 points. And even though Rick Barry got him to an 80% foul shooting, he refused to do it in a game Because who would do that on national television? And Rick Barry said, to this day, he has not been able. He has proved it's better. He has proved it works. He has proved it's superior. But not one NBA player will do it in a game. Do not throw your pearls before the swine. God is calling you to be different, to be sacred, to be holy. Do not give to the dogs what is holy. You are holy. You are different. You are sacred. That's who I've called you to be. Don't be ashamed of it. Don't compromise it. Don't give it up. Because compromise is this thing that never stops with one. It just keeps going. And before you know it, you may find yourself, and some of us as adults have had those wake-up moments where we find ourselves in our 30s, our 40s, our 50s, and we don't even recognize ourselves anymore. Because we forgot, and we started casting our pearls away. Maybe it didn't happen all at once. Maybe it wasn't one decision. Maybe it was a series of little decisions. But we wake up one day and realize our pearls are gone. We don't even know who we are anymore. We don't even know what we stand for anymore. I don't know what tempts you. I don't know where your compromise is. I don't know if you're kind of innately a people pleaser. But I know that Jesus is talking to you today, and Jesus is saying you need to do what is right. Don't give up what I've given you. Don't compromise what you value. Don't give up what I've taught you. Don't let them take what is yours. You can choose to give it when it's needed. But it is not theirs. It is your life. You will answer in the judgment day. You will have to look back and look at your life and say, did I do? Did I live it the way I knew it was right? Did I value the things that were valuable? Did I execute those things that were important to me? Did I become the kind of person that I wanted to be, that my childhood self dreamed I could be? Or did I let others? Did I let the world? Did I let the media? Did I let marketing? Did I let the laughter? Did I let the mocking? Did I let the teasing? Did I let the worry? Did I let the fear? Whatever it is the devil uses to steal your pearls, did I give them away to people who didn't even appreciate what I was giving? So I'm going to challenge you this morning. Think about this week. What is it that I really value? Who do I really want to be? And whether it's your spouse or whether it's your parents or whether it's your boss or whether it's just society, wherever that pressure comes from to be something other than what God has called you to be, I want to encourage you. You have the right to say no. You have the right to say, hey, I love you, but I can't do that. I don't want to hurt you, but I can't go with this. I don't want to make you feel bad, but I cannot go along with this. I cannot let you talk to me this way. I cannot accept that this is the way things are going to be. I have to value myself because God has made me valuable. And I'm not going to cast that away. Because in the end, that's all I have. That's what I was given. I can't control you. I can't make your life different. I can't solve everything for you. But I can do for me because that's who I'm in charge of. That's who God put me in gave me the responsibility for. And I'm going to do the best I can, and I hope it's loving, I hope it's kind, and I hope it makes a difference, and I hope I'm a blessing. But sometimes I may have to do something you don't like. And that's from God too. So think about what your values are. Think about this week. Ask God, what do I need to stand up for? Where have I started to go off the trail that you've called me to walk, the path you've called me to walk? And may I be true, so that when that day comes, I can say, Lord, I did the best I could. Thank you for welcoming me into your kingdom. This is my prayer for you.